One of the scariest moments of the Attitude Era was when The Undertaker returned and performed a human sacrifice on Dennis Knight. Of course, this wasn't real, but how did WWE do it? Well, there are actually two different tricks being played here. Firstly, the knife The Undertaker is using has been smoothed and dulled, so there is no risk that The Undertaker or Dennis Knight will actually get hurt. Now, here's the next secret. The Undertaker has a hidden packet of fake blood strapped to his wrist that's been painted over to hide it. By applying just a bit of pressure, the blood pack opens and the red liquid begins to flow out. Notice that the camera angle doesn't change until the blood is already flowing. But how does the blood appear on Dennis Knight's chest? No secret blood packets or anything have been placed on Knight's body. Instead, the secret lies in the Undertaker's knife. The inside of the knife is hollow and filled with fake blood. There's also a small opening at the end of the knife. When pressed, the fake blood is released, making it appear as though Undertaker is slicing up Knight's chest. You can actually see that it doesn't work the first time Undertaker tries it. Now, how does someone get their hand set on fire and not get burned? Before coming out to the ring, the enhancement talent had his right hand covered in fire retardant gel. You can actually faintly see the outline of the gel on Chris Hahn's hand in the clip. The next step then happens at the ring. While getting inside the squared circle, a WWE production member is standing nearby. He is there to take the wrestler's towel, but more importantly, he's there for the next step. While the wrestler is crouched in the corner, the production member puts a small bit of flammable liquid in the wrestler's hand. He then sets it on fire using a small lighter, without anyone actually getting hurt. Now, how do you kill a snake without actually killing it? Jake Roberts was famous for bringing a live snake with him to the ring and even using it to attack his opponents.
Damien! Movie! Oh no! Oh no! It's all around the giant! Look at this!
However, Jake's reptile would meet its untimely end when Roberts fought Earthquake. During the match, Earthquake tied Jake up in the ropes and then brought Jake Roberts' snake into the ring. With Roberts unable to do anything, Earthquake ran the ropes and squashed the reptile. Now, thankfully, no animals were hurt. But how did WWE do it? After putting the snake in the bag, Jake Roberts did something unusual and slid the bag under the ring. The reason for this was there was actually a second identical brown bag under the ring. As you can guess, the second bag is the one Earthquake grabbed when he reached under the ring. Still, you can tell there was something inside the bag. So what was it? To give the shape of a coiled snake, WWE put hamburger meat inside a pair of pantyhose. WWE would do a similar trick years later when Triple H was feuding with Stone Cold Steve Austin. During a backstage segment, Triple H was in a room filled with venomous snakes. The gang grabbed one of them and put the snake in a bag before killing it with a hammer. Now, the snake Triple H held was real, but it wasn't a rattlesnake. It was actually a bull snake, which are non-venomous and safer to use. But how did Triple H kill the snake without actually killing it? After placing the bag on the floor, Triple H walks over to grab his sledgehammer. You can see in the reflection a crew member swapping the bag with an empty one. Now that's pretty violent, but not nearly as violent as what Big Show did to Kurt Angle. To protect Angle, WWE had a crash pad laid out on the floor that was out of the camera's frame. After the stunt, WWE removed the crash pad and put fake blood behind Kurt Angle's head to make it look like he had landed on the concrete floor. However, that wasn't actually Kurt Angle. Angle was legitimately injured at the time, and Vince McMahon didn't want Angle performing the stunt. In the segment, the camera zooms in on Tori Wilson for a few seconds. This allows Angle to switch places with a stunt double, who makes sure to keep his back facing the camera. You'll notice too that the person Big Show chokeslams has a slightly different body shape from Kurt Angle. WWE did a similar trick at Survivor Series 1999. During the show, Stone Cold Steve Austin was infamously hit by a car driven by Rikishi. However, seconds before Austin got hit, the camera zoomed in on the oncoming vehicle. During that time, a stuntman switched places with Austin and took the hit. After that, the camera followed the vehicle until it left, then went back to Stone Cold. This gave the real Steve Austin time to switch places with the stuntman and act like he had been hit. The clue that gives this away is Austin's belt. Before he goes into the parking lot, you can see that Stone Cold's black belt covers the brown patch on his jeans. However, when Austin gets hit by the car, the patch is fully visible, and there's no belt. Then, when we see Stone Cold again, his belt is magically back around his waist. Talking about attempted murder, remember that time The Undertaker actually killed someone? After The Undertaker defeated Big Boss Man in a Hell in a Cell match, the Brood repelled from the top of the arena and gave the dead man a rope that he then put around Boss Man's neck. The cell was then raised and the Big Boss Man was dangling in midair. So, what's the secret? Underneath Boss Man's vest was a harness. Thanks to Boss Man's regular attire, the harness blended in perfectly. Then, in the knot of the rope, there was a small black hook. The Undertaker simply connected this hook to Boss Man's hidden harness, and while it looked like Boss Man was being held by his neck, he was actually completely safe. Knowing the secret makes this moment less disturbing, but this next secret is actually pretty creepy once you know it. In 2001, videos began playing during WWE broadcasts that showed someone stalking The Undertaker's wife.
This is The Undertaker's wife, Sarah, combing her beautiful blonde hair. She has a nice figure.
The stalker was later revealed to be Diamond Dallas Page. However, the distorted voice was not Page's. By adjusting the audio, fans were able to find out who the true stalker was.
This is The Undertaker's wife, Sarah, combing her beautiful blonde hair. She has a nice figure.
Yes, that's Vince McMahon, and knowing what we know now, this makes this discovery even creepier. One of the most memorable moments in ECW history was when Taz and Bam Bam Bigelow went through the ring. How was this pulled off? Well, it was actually a pretty elaborate plan. First, a wrestling ring has a steel frame, followed by thick wooden boards laid across the top, then a thin layer of padding, and finally, the canvas. For the stunt with Taz and Bam Bam, a small section of the wooden boards had been cut ahead of time. Once the two were out of the ring, the production crew quietly removed the cut wooden boards, leaving a clean opening in the ring. Thanks to the canvas, fans couldn't see this. This is actually why Taz and Bigelow spent so much time on the outside. They needed to give the production crew time to get the ring ready. Once everything was good to go, there was one more secret. On the top rope was a small piece of white tape. Bam Bam ran his hand across the top rope, and once he felt the tape, he knew he was in the right spot. During a segment on SmackDown, Mark Henry rolled up a frying pan like a newspaper. Now, was the frying pan real? Well, technically no. The frying pan that Henry used was made of a lighter metal, which made it easier and faster to bend. Henry also wrapped a towel around the object so that the metal wouldn't puncture his hands. However, while the frying pan seen on screen was not real, that doesn't mean Mark Henry couldn't bend a real one. As a prank, Henry was given a real frying pan that wasn't meant to bend. After a few struggles, Henry still managed to bend the real frying pan to the amazement of everyone watching. It wasn't just WWE and ECW that did insane stunts though. WCW did them too, like when Kimberly Page was thrown out of a moving vehicle on Monday Night Nitro.
Oh my God!
Like other wrestling secrets, this one has a few layers. The clues are Kimberly's hair and the clothes she's wearing. We see Kimberly Page enter the car, and here's where the magic begins. In the back seat was a stunt double. Once the camera couldn't see her, Kimberly and her double switched places. The giveaway is the change in hair color once Kimberly gets pushed out of the car. Now, Kimberly's clothes play two critical roles. One, having such layered clothing made it easier to disguise the stunt double. It also provided protection for the stunt double once she hit the pavement. Now, Kimberly wasn't a wrestler, so it makes sense why she would have a double. However, some stunts are so dangerous that even wrestlers have to use a stunt double. For instance, at the Great American Bash pay-per-view in 2000, Sting fought Vampiro in a Human Torch match. As you can probably guess, the way to win was by setting your opponent on fire. In the final moments of the match, Sting and Vampiro climbed on top of the set and began fighting. The lights suddenly went out, but when they went back on, the camera was zoomed out. Vampiro then set Sting on fire and the icon fell to the floor below. But that wasn't actually Sting. The real Sting switched places with a stunt double during the blackout. The production crew did a good job covering this up. But after the fall, Sting tries to get up, or rather, the stunt double does, and you can see that he has short hair and not the signature long black hair of the Stinger. We've seen some awesome WWE entrances over the years. However, they become a lot more interesting when you pull the camera back and see how they are pulled off. The Undertaker knows how to make an entrance, especially at WrestleMania. One of the Dead Man's coolest introductions was at WrestleMania 29 with a group of hands rising from the ground. Because of all the fog, it's difficult to see what's actually going on, but thanks to videos from fans who were there, we know the truth. There was an opening created on the floor of the stage. That's where the Undertaker and all those hands came from. To prevent viewers watching on TV from seeing this, WWE kept showing wide shots until the fog filled the stage. Now, who did those hands belong to? Well, it was actually other wrestlers like Xavier Woods, Sami Zayn, The Ascension, and many others. To keep their identities hidden, WWE had them wear black or red bodysuits. When he first appeared in WWE, Bray Wyatt had a distinct way of letting fans know when he was about to make his entrance.
We're here.
Wyatt, along with the Wyatt family members, would walk slowly to the ring with a lantern in hand. I hate to break it to you, but the lantern is a fake. Well, at least one of them is. The lantern that would appear in the video was real, but the one that Bray brought to the ring wasn't. The ring lantern was electric, with a switch on the bottom. You'll notice that Bray Wyatt always put his other hand underneath the lantern when he blew it out. That's because that's where the switch to turn off the lantern was located. However, you'll see in the backstage video that Wyatt would not touch the bottom of the lantern because it was the real thing. There are a few reasons why WWE used a fake lantern when Wyatt was walking towards the ring. The main one is that using a real lantern with a real flame wouldn't be bright enough inside of a massive arena. Additionally, there's always a chance that Bray wouldn't have been able to blow out the flame on his first attempt. Imagine how embarrassing and damaging it would be to his character if the flame didn't go out when he blew. The Ascension didn't have a spectacular entrance, but it was unique, with Connor and Victor rising from the ground. It looked cool on camera, but what was it like in person? You can see in this video that Connor and Victor actually come out before their music even starts playing. Then, when the timing is right, they would stand up and rise into the camera frame. During WrestleMania 32, the New Day got one of the sweetest entrances ever. A giant box of Bootios appeared on the stage that then tipped over, and out came Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, and Big E. It was awesome, but how exactly did they do it? Well, watching a video a fan recorded, we can see that there are actually two stagehands already in the box, and they're the ones that tip it over. After a short while, the New Day runs out from the back, walks in through one side of the box, and then appears on the other. The entire time, the WWE camera crew is careful not to show the far right side of the box, so that viewers don't see the New Day running in. Asuka's entrance isn't that flashy compared to the others we've talked about. However, there is a unique secret. Asuka always wears a mask when she enters, but how does she keep it attached to her face? There's no strap or anything, so what's the secret? Well, there's a small piece that sticks out on the inside of the mask. Asuka bites down on that, which allows her to hold the mask in place until she is ready to take it off. Fireworks and pyro are a signature part of some wrestlers' entrances and WWE shows in general. However, WWE's pyro isn't 100% authentic. The fireworks and pyro you see during the opening of a WWE show or during a wrestler's entrance are real, but the noise you are hearing is not actually coming from the pyro. In addition to the actual pyro, WWE also uses what are called concussion pyros. The concussion pyros just make noise and no explosions or blasts. Almost any time WWE uses pyro, they also have the concussion pyro going off to make it sound really loud. This is why Kane's pyro sounds like an explosion. To show you how much of a difference concussion pyro makes, here are two examples. In a rare scenario, WWE once had a wrestler enter with just concussion pyro. Right before Ryback would start marching towards the ring, fans would hear a large boom. Some fans thought there was pyro happening off camera, but as you can see in this video, that isn't the case. One person who did have pyro during his entrance was John Morrison. He also had one of the coolest entrances in WWE history. Almost every time he would come out, he would smoothly transition into slow motion. Even the pyro slowed down for him. So how did it work? As you can probably guess, this is a TV production trick, similar to how the cameras would become cinematic like a movie during Goldust's entrance, or how everything went black and white when the NWO walked out. For John Morrison, WWE lowered the camera's frame rate to give it the slow-mo effect. This looked cool for the fans watching on TV, but for the people in the arena, they would just see John Morrison moving at normal speed. However, doing the slow motion effect would make the TV broadcast fall behind, so how did they get back to normal speed? Well, immediately after John Morrison's slow motion, WWE would cut away to a wide shot or another wrestler that was at the normal frame rate. After that, they'd go back to the camera that Morrison was on, which was now back to normal speed. Usually, WWE covered this up pretty well, but sometimes they accidentally showed too much, and John Morrison would magically teleport. One of the best parts about WWE is all the weapons wrestlers use and the crazy stunts they create with them. Of course, WWE is scripted, but some of these moments are extreme. So what are the secrets, and how does WWE pull them off without actually hurting anyone? Fireballs are not used often in WWE anymore, and there's a good reason for that. The fire is 100% real, which is why it's so dangerous. The way a wrestler creates a fireball is by using what's called flash paper, which is made out of a highly flammable compound called nitrocellulose. A wrestler uses a lighter to set the flash paper on fire and throws it towards the other wrestler's face. Because the flash paper burns so fast, it limits the chances of someone actually getting burned. This also makes it harder for fans to see that the fireball isn't really burning anyone. When Kane appeared in WWE, he shot fireballs as well, but he did it a bit differently. Instead of throwing the flash paper, Kane had a small gun that he loaded the paper into. Not only would the gun shoot the flash paper, but it would also set it on fire. This not only looked better, but also made the stunt easier to perform and left less room for error. Alexa Bliss would use a similar device in 2021 when she shot a fireball at Randy Orton. However, photos taken of the incident showed just how close the fire got to Orton's face. While the Viper wasn't legitimately injured by the stunt, someone else was. Back when Kane was still shooting fireballs, he was about to hit Triple H with one, but ended up blasting Chyna instead. While this was part of the script, the moment became very serious because the fireball actually hit Chyna for real. Luckily, it didn't cause any long-lasting injuries, but it goes to show how dangerous working with fire is. One of the most violent moments in WrestleMania history was during the no-holds-barred match between Triple H and Batista. At one point, Triple H pulled the animal's nose ring out with a pair of pliers. It looked brutal, but if you look closely, the ring is still in Batista's nose after Triple H yanks the pliers away. Right after this happened, Triple H went to the referee, who gave the King of Kings a second nose ring. This second ring is the one that the game held up for the camera. While this was happening, Batista crawled out of the ring, with his face to the floor. This gave him time to take out the actual nose ring without the fans seeing him do it. As I said, this match was brutal, and at a different point, Triple H tried to break Batista's fingers with a different pair of pliers. If you look closely though, you'll see that the handles on the end are all the way down and touching each other. This prevented the pliers from pinching the animal's fingers and actually hurting him. During a different moment, Triple H started whipping Batista with a metal chain. Now, this was a real chain, but the game and the animal did something very clever to prevent anyone from getting hurt. First, Batista made sure to lie near the announcer's table. Then, when Triple H whipped the chain, it hit the table first, which took the brunt of the impact. With some clever camera positioning, it looked like Triple H was whipping Batista full force. Speaking of Triple H, the game is synonymous with Sledgehammers. The cerebral assassin used the weapon throughout most of his WWE career, but was it real or fake? Pretty much every sledgehammer Triple H used was the real deal. That's why he would always cup his hand around the top of it whenever he hit people. With that knowledge, you might gasp when you see this clip.
Look out! Oh my! To the back of the skull of the Big Show!
When Triple H first started using the sledgehammer, he used one with a rubber head, which is how he could hit people without seriously injuring them. However, the wooden handle was real and could accidentally hurt someone. This is what caused Triple H to use a real hammer and, most importantly, shield whoever he hit with his hand. In addition to the sledgehammer, another dangerous looking WWE weapon is the cinder block. Wrestlers have had their faces and other parts of their bodies smashed into these things. So what is going on that allows them to do this without dying? Unlike real cinder blocks that are made of concrete, WWE cinder blocks are made of a plaster-like mixture containing water and sand. That mix is then poured into a mold of a real cinder block. After it hardens, the block is then dyed and detailed to make it look like an actual cinder block. Because the mixture is so brittle, the cinder block breaks very easily and gives a crumbling effect. This also makes it safe for the wrestlers to use, and they only feel a very light impact when hit by one of these blocks. One of the most spectacular WWE moments is whenever a wrestler goes through a sheet of glass. The only thing that doesn't make any sense is how the wrestler avoids cutting and injuring themselves. That's because the wrestlers aren't going through glass at all. Whenever WWE needs someone to go through a sheet of glass, they use sugar glass. Sugar glass is created by mixing sugar and water together and heating it up. When it's hardened, the sugar looks like a sheet of glass, but it's much easier to break than real glass and way less dangerous. Since it is sugar, you can actually eat it, so there's little to no harm whenever a wrestler goes through sugar glass. To see what going through actual glass looks like, you need to watch the 2001 King of the Ring pay-per-view. During their street fight, Kurt Angle threw his opponent, Shane McMahon, into a glass structure, but it didn't break immediately. That's because that glass was plexiglass, which is the real deal. They were eventually able to make the glass break, but Shane McMahon got seriously injured because of it. An attack that seems far less dangerous, but is still spectacular to see, is the green mist to the face. The green mist used by wrestlers like Tajiri and Asuka is a mixture of water and green food coloring. It doesn't hurt at all, and the wrestler who takes the move just pretends the mist is burning their face. Now, how does the green mist end up in a wrestler's mouth? Usually, the wrestler who'll be spraying the green mist gets a small capsule from the referee. The capsule dissolves in the wrestler's mouth, and when the time is right, they spray the mist. The wrestler usually can only have the capsule right before they are going to spray someone, since it is a choking hazard, and the wrestler could accidentally spray the mist prematurely. One of the most brutal images in WWE history was when Khali squeezed Rey Mysterio's head so hard that Rey started bleeding from the mouth. Obviously, that wasn't real blood, so how did WWE do it? Well, the first part of the trick is Rey Mysterio's gear. Despite being known for wearing extremely bright colors, Mysterio decided to wear a mostly black attire on this night. Then, after Khali gives Rey the big boot, the cameras go to a tight shot of the Indian Giant. During this time, a WWE crew member is discreetly handing Mysterio a small capsule. Rey puts this in his right hand, and because he's wearing black gloves, the capsule is practically invisible. Finally, just before Khali grabs the sides of Rey's head, Mysterio subtly puts the capsule in his mouth. What's inside this capsule is a mixture of corn syrup, flour, and red food coloring. Once the moment is right, Rey Mysterio bites on the capsule, causing the red liquid to pour out of his mouth, making it look like the Great Khali is so strong he's making Rey bleed from the inside. This is not the only trick WWE used to make Khali look strong. During a backstage interview, the Great Khali crushed a cantaloupe and watermelon to demonstrate its strength. While Khali is strong, WWE used some tricks to help him out. The watermelon was cut on the back, which is why juice started pouring out the moment Khali applied pressure. That's also why the watermelon split from the back, since that's where it was weaker. WWE would use a similar trick years later when Braun Strowman crushed an apple with one hand. You can faintly see a cut on the apple, which made it easier for Strowman to smash. On SmackDown in 2009, Edge was hosting his show, The Cutting Edge. The Radar superstar was supposed to have Jeff Hardy as a guest, but things didn't go according to plan when Hardy was blasted by his own pyro. While it looked very convincing, it was a stage stunt and part of the show. First, the sparks that hit Jeff Hardy weren't that hot. A special kind of grain was used that didn't burn when touched. For the other pyrotechnics, they were carefully placed so that Hardy was close enough that it looked like it hit him, but far enough away that it didn't do any harm. Jeff Hardy also poured water on his head and body before coming out to keep his hair and clothes from burning. Goldberg used the same type of pyro for his entrance, which is why he could stand inside it without getting fried. On the topic of Edge, both he and Christian created one of the most iconic tag team moves, the Concerto.
Come on, don't do this! The Concerto!
The move looked absolutely brutal, so it begs the question, what's the secret? The chairs, just like all chairs in WWE, are real, making the Concerto extremely dangerous. The trick is to have the tops of the chairs hit each other behind the opponent's head. When done correctly, the chairs make a V shape. This provides a gap between the chairs, which keeps the wrestler taking the move safe, while the ends of the chairs hitting together make a loud crashing sound.
Damn it!
In addition to the sound, the other secret is the camera angle. When shot from the right angle, the Concerto looks devastating, but from the wrong side, it's clear the opponent didn't get touched at all. But what makes the Concerto so dangerous is that both wrestlers have to swing at the exact same time. If one of them is off by just a fraction of a second, it can cause a lot of pain for the wrestler taking the move. This is actually why the two-man Concerto has been banned from WWE. The risk of a concussion or another injury is too high, so instead, wrestlers do a one-man Concerto. It's the same idea, but instead, the person taking the move lays flat on their stomach. Just like with the two-man Concerto, the wrestler performing the one-man move isn't aiming for the opponent's head, but just a few inches away from it. This creates just enough of a gap to keep the wrestler safe, but still look vicious. Wrestlers must still have a clear target to execute it safely though. When Randy Orton was giving Edge a Concerto, you can see the Viper move Edge's hair out of the way to give himself a perfect line of sight. While this version of the move is safer, it's not entirely risk-free. At No Mercy in 2001, Edge gave Christian a Concerto on top of a ladder. Due to the limited space and awkward position, Edge accidentally connected with Christian's head and gave Captain Charisma a concussion. Now, what's more vicious than a chair shot to the head? How about a sledgehammer? How did they pull this off without Big Show suffering serious damage? Well, that's not a real sledgehammer. The wood is real, but the head is made of rubber, so while it looked painful, it didn't hurt at all. In his later years, Triple H would start using a real sledgehammer. However, he would always put his hand over the head to keep the person he was hitting safe. No WWE fan will ever forget this.
A 500-pound superplex! Oh my God! What the hell?
Spoiler, this is all planned. So how did WWE pull it off? Years after the stunt, Big Show came clean and revealed how it was done. WWE had airbags under the ring that were inflated once Lesnar and Big Show got on the turnbuckle. You can even see a piece of the equipment used to inflate the bags on the floor earlier in the match. These airbags were only on one side of the ring and were inflated just enough to raise that part off the ground. You can notice the ring post shaking after Big Show and Brock Lesnar push off the top rope. The impact from the superplex caused the ring post to flip. Then, the production team had the airbags deflate, causing the ring to fall to the floor. That's why there's a slight delay from when the ring posts flip to the ring actually falling down. Once Brock and Show got on the turnbuckle, the airbags underneath the ring were actually holding it up, not the ring posts. John Cena and Batista's 2010 rivalry saw them face off in an I Quit match. One of the most extreme moments was when Batista placed Cena near the entrance stage and backed into him with a car. How did Cena stay safe? Well, there's a solid black box conveniently next to the car. Once the camera crew switched to an angle where you couldn't see behind the vehicle, Cena crawled over there. It would have worked pretty well too, had fans not been able to see Cena poke out from behind the black box. One of the scariest WWE moments was when Jake Roberts started terrorizing Macho Man Randy Savage and his wife, Miss Elizabeth. It began during Savage and Elizabeth's wedding reception when Roberts gifted the newlyweds a live cobra. To keep everyone safe, WWE didn't use a real snake. At least when people were around. When you see the shot with the cobra and people in it, the snake is actually a rubber toy. To make it convincing, WWE filled some tight shots with a real cobra, then added them in later. That worked fine since there was no live audience. But what about when Roberts attacked Randy Savage with a live cobra in the ring? The king cobra is one of the most venomous snakes in the entire world, and a bite from it can kill someone in 30 minutes. Of course, Savage did not die, so how did they do it? Well, that was a real king cobra, and it did really bite the Macho Man. However, the cobra's venom glands had been removed prior to the stunt. The snake still had its fangs though, which is why Macho Man's arm started bleeding during the bite. Despite all this, Macho Man was rushed to the hospital 5 days later with a fever. In an ironic turn of events, the cobra died 12 days after biting Savage. The snake may have been devenomized, but Macho Man wasn't. A signature part of Kevin Owens' matches is when an opponent grabs KO by the head and throws him into the steel steps.
Oh my God! You can't even look at that.
It looks vicious, and if done incorrectly, can lead to a busted head or even a concussion. However, KO does two things to keep himself safe. First, when possible, Owens will try to have the edge of the steel steps hit the top of his back, not his head. However, as an extra protection, as Owens is being thrown into the steel, he quickly covers the back of his head with both of his hands. Both of these secrets make it unlikely that Kevin Owens will get seriously hurt. However, the spot is still dangerous due to how precise Owens has to be with where he lands and getting his hands in place in under a second. Backlash 2009 ended with a bang when the Big Show chokeslammed John Cena through an exploding spotlight. Okay, what's the secret here? First, the glass that Cena hit wasn't actually glass. It was actually made out of sugar glass, which is created by heating water and sugar. It looks like real glass, but breaks much more easily and doesn't cut like the real stuff. The sugar is also the reason the glass stuck to John Cena's body after going through it. As for the spotlight, the inside was fitted with padding and foam to cushion the landing. You can see the difference in these two images. And for the explosion, pyrotechnic charges were set on the side and back of the spotlight. This allowed for a big blast, while John Cena was shielded by being inside the spotlight. To win an Inferno match, you have to set your opponent on fire. This is an extremely dangerous stunt because the fire is real. And yet, no one has been seriously injured. So how's it done? Kane spilled the beans in his 2019 autobiography. During the first Inferno match in 1998, The Undertaker fought Kane. The first trick is that both men were coated in flame-retardant chemicals before going to the ring, but there was much more to it. As the match went on, Kane and Taker ended up outside of the squared circle, where Kane was knocked down. The dead man then walked up the entrance stage and started fighting Kane's manager, Paul Bearer. While this is going on, Kane crawled under the ring, where a few WWE production members were hiding. The Big Red Machine was wearing a special costume where the right sleeve could be taken off. After that was removed, Kane replaced it with a sleeve made out of flame-retardant material. The crew members then applied cooling gel with an accelerant on his right arm. You can see the outline once the Undertaker returns to the ring. After that, the Big Red Machine was pushed into the flames and his sleeve was on fire. Kane quickly walked backstage, and once the cameras were off him, the fire was put out. WWE used the same trick 8 years later when Kane fought MVP in an Inferno match. Once the two were out of the ring, MVP crawled under the ring skirt. During that time, a production member quickly applied cooling gel to MVP's back. This is why Kane randomly stalled for a moment before pulling his opponent back out. Then, almost immediately after, MVP is pushed towards the fire and is set ablaze. In 2008, WWE wanted more people to watch Monday Night Raw, so they went the Mr. Beast route and gave money away. It was called $1 Million Mania, and while you probably don't remember who won the money, you definitely remember how the contest ended. Vince McMahon was on stage when suddenly the whole structure fell apart, injuring the chairman of WWE. Despite how real WWE tried to make it feel, it was all part of the show. But how exactly did they pull it off? To begin, a crew member was hiding under the stage with a secret latch. When the moment was right, the latch was pulled and the platform McMahon was standing on collapsed. Likewise, special levers in the giant LED sign were released when it was time for the board to come crashing down on Vince. All McMahon had to do was make sure he ducked before impact, and after that, it was all showbiz.
He's gonna be all right. I didn't go by down.
In the lead up to his WrestleMania 21 match against sumo wrestler Akibono, Big Show demonstrated his strength by flipping over a Jeep. It was impressive, but there was a trick to pull off this stunt. SmackDown did not air live, so when Big Show went to push the Jeep, a production member came out with a car jack to lift the vehicle. This raised the Jeep to a level where Big Show could more easily push it over. You can see when the camera cuts away from Big Show that the vehicle is noticeably a few inches higher than in the last shot. One of the classic WWE moments is when a wrestler goes through the barricade. Now, what are the tricks? First, WWE barricades are padded from top to bottom to make them as safe as possible. Second, the barricades are all small individual sections that are linked together. Before the big spot, WWE's production crew loosens the links on the barricade section that the wrestlers will hit. This causes that part of the barricade to go down with ease and keeps the rest of the barricades standing upright. There's more to it though. More often than not, wrestlers will break through the piece of the barricade that's in the timekeeper's area. This is so fans don't get in the way or accidentally knock the barricade over. However, when WWE wants to have wrestlers break through a side of the barricade where the fans are, they don't allow real paying fans to sit in that area. Instead, the company uses extras, typically local independent wrestlers not signed with WWE. They know what's going to happen, and not only does this keep the real fans safe, but also gives the exact reaction WWE wants. When Mark Henry slams Sheamus through the barricade, you can actually see a young LA Knight in the crowd. Another classic WWE spot is breaking through the steel cage. These work similar to the barricades. WWE keeps one part of the cage very loose, only held by an easily breakable piece. The wrestlers also purposely avoid interacting with that part of the cage until it's time for the spot. In fact, these links are so easy to break that the cage can start to fall before the wrestler touches it, as seen during this legendary spot between Bobby Lashley and Umaga. One of the most bizarre matches in WWE history was the eye for an eye match. Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio fought in a match where the goal was to gouge your opponent's eye out. Rey lost. However, he still has two perfectly working eyes today, so how did WWE pull it off? When Rollins was pushing Mysterio's eye into the steel steps, Rey had his thumb placed between the steel and his right eye. This allowed Rollins to really drive the masked luchador into the steel steps with no fear of actually injuring Rey. The camera angle helps sell the danger, since you can't see Rey Mysterio's thumb protecting him. Finally, to complete the illusion, Rey Mysterio placed a fake eye on top of his real eye to make it look like the organ had popped out. A wrestler going through the ring is always an awesome spot, but how is it done? Former WWE wrestler Dean Ambrose, aka Jon Moxley, revealed in his autobiography that there's always someone under the ring at every televised WWE show. This person tightens cables, makes sure weapons are in the right spot, pushes Sin Cara's trampoline out for his entrance, and more. Before a wrestler is going to be slammed through the ring, this crew member will remove the wooden boards and support where the wrestler is going to land. The foam padding is kept in place so the ring retains its shape. Like with the steel cage, wrestlers are careful to avoid the loose section of the ring until it's time for the spot.
Strowman's not finished
Oh my
yet.
God, the running power slam! Through the ring!
Additionally, a small pad is placed under the spot where the wrestler lands so they don't land on the cement floor. However, in some cases, this pad has to be removed quickly. At SummerSlam, The Undertaker chokeslammed Edge through the ring. The Radar superstar noted that as soon as he landed on the mat, crew members under the ring pulled the mat out. This is because a burst of fire needed to appear shortly after the spot. However, because of the flames, smoke filled under the ring. All the crew members came prepared with masks, but Edge didn't have one. This made it difficult to breathe, and the Radar superstar was left coughing until he could finally leave the ring. One of the biggest OMG moments was seeing 77-year-old Mae Young powerbombed through a table. It was a high-risk stunt, but some safety precautions were taken. First, the tables were on top of an inflated crash mat, which cushioned the landing. Bubba Ray also took the brunt of the impact to keep Mae safe. Immediately after landing, Mae Young also squeezed Bubba's hand to signal that she was okay. During WWE tag team matches, how do wrestlers know when to tag in their partner? Well, there's actually a secret signal wrestlers give each other in order to time it just right. The wrestler on the ring apron will use their hand to communicate. If their palm is facing down, it tells the legal wrestler not to tag in. But when the palm faces up, that's a signal to make the tag. There are many other secret signals wrestlers use to communicate with each other during matches, and some of them can be the difference between life and death. First, watch this clip and see if you can catch the signal.
The title! For the title! Look at the leg!
Did you catch it? In order to make matches more dramatic, wrestlers will kick out right before the count of 3. To time this right, the wrestler being pinned will have his or her eyes open so that he or she can watch the referee's count and time it just right. This also allows wrestlers to silently tell the referee the match isn't over yet and not to count to 3. Another signal that a wrestler is going to kick out is if they position their hands under their opponent's chest. Now here's how you can tell if a wrestler is going to counter John Cena's attitude adjustment.
Going for attitude adjustment perhaps on John Morrison. And wow!
When Cena has his opponent on his shoulders, look at where the opponent's hands are. If the wrestler has a hand pressed on Cena's chest or around his neck, this means the opponent is going to do a flip and counter the move. Alternatively, if the wrestler's arms are dangling or loosely touching Cena, then the move is going to be performed successfully.
Cena going for the AA!
Sometimes, wrestlers have very specific hand signals, and it can be pretty funny. During the Shield and Evolution's feud in 2014, Roman Reigns fought Batista on Raw. It soon devolved into chaos as Triple H and Randy Orton got involved, which prompted Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose to do the same. The Raw locker room also came out to help Evolution, but the Shield cleared house and ended the night standing strong. However, Triple H wanted the Shield to do their signature 3-fist pose. The game repeatedly made a few subtle motions to tell Dean, Seth, and Roman to do it. Eventually, Roman Reigns caught on, and the Shield hit their iconic pose, but it was funny how many times Triple H had to move his arms before they finally got the message. Triple's how professional WWE wrestlers are. Now speaking of Randy Orton, the Viper has a secret hand signal he uses during matches. Watch these 2 clips and see if you notice anything different.
Orton turning the tables on Rude. Power slam!
Of course, in the first clip, Randy successfully hit the power slam and was unsuccessful in the second, but take a look at Orton's hands. When the Viper hits the power slam, he claps his hands, but when he isn't going to hit the move, there's no clap.
You thought I did! WWE World Heavyweight Champion went for the power.
The clap tells Orton's opponent to follow through and brace for the power slam. A similar method of communicating is used when wrestlers perform DDTs. When a wrestler performs a DDT, their opponent needs to know if they'll take the move or counter it. Like the power slam, a slap on the back tells the wrestler to take the DDT. If there is no slap, then the opponent needs to counter. An example of this happened during Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair's match at Extreme Rules. The first time Bliss went to perform a DDT, there was no slap, and Flair countered. However, the second time Alexa went to perform the move, she slapped Charlotte's back and the DDT was successful. Now here's how to tell if a wrestler's going to hit a move from the top rope or not. The trick isn't to watch the wrestler climbing the turnbuckle, but actually the wrestler lying on the mat. Look at the wrestler's legs. If one of their legs is bent with their foot flat on the mat, that means the wrestler is going to push off and dodge the high-flying move. If the wrestler stays completely flat, then the wrestler performing the top rope maneuver is going to hit it successfully. Similarly, there's a signal that you can look for to tell if a wrestler is going to hit a superplex or not. not. Like with other top rope moves, look at the wrestler's legs. If the wrestler taking the superplex has their legs in front of the ropes, then they will counter the move. This is because a wrestler's legs have to be behind the ropes in order for the move to be performed safely. Wrestlers will also use unique hand gestures to communicate specific actions. When Chris Jericho and Triple H were having a match, the game sneakily communicated he'd give Jericho the boot by tapping his quad as Y2J was running toward him. On an episode of Raw in 2014, Dean Ambrose and John Cena were wrestling in the main event. Raw was about to go off the air, so Dean Ambrose made a signal to Cena to speed things up since they only had 6 minutes left. At WrestleMania 22, right before Shawn Michaels hit Vince McMahon with an elbow drop from a ladder, the referee squeezed McMahon's leg to tell the boss to brace for impact. Years later, at WrestleMania 29, CM Punk was accompanied by Paul Heyman for his match against The Undertaker. During the fight, the dead man grabbed Heyman by the throat. Punk then attacked Taker with a clothesline to break it up. Since Undertaker had his back turned and couldn't see CM Punk, Paul Heyman squeezed Taker's shoulder so he knew to turn around and take the clothesline. While that was a pretty subtle cue, Vince McMahon's was the complete opposite of that. At the 2001 Survivor Series, Team WWE defeated the Alliance, ending the Invasion storyline. The next night, Vince McMahon and Kurt Angle were celebrating the victory when they were interrupted by the return of Ric Flair. Flair revealed he had become part owner of WWE and that he and Vince were business partners. McMahon famously started tugging at his right ear and was then beaten up by Stone Cold Steve Austin. That ear tug, though, was actually a cue, as WWE producer Bruce Pritchard revealed.
So his cue for this one night was, when I pull my ear, that's the cue to hit the music. Since Vince thought that as soon as he touched his ear, the music would instantaneously hit, and it didn't, he began massaging and tugging, and he was milking that mother for all it was worth, until finally the music blared and then he was making funny faces. So that's that famous shot that you see everywhere is Vince telling me to hit the music.
A more direct way wrestlers communicate is by simply talking to each other. The term is called calling a spot, and this is where a wrestler will secretly talk during a match to tell their opponent what to do next, or even to make sure they are okay. This usually happens when one wrestler has their opponent in a submission hold, or when a wrestler is picking his opponent off the ground, or really any opportunity where the wrestlers' heads are close together.
X-Pac reversing the Irish whip again. Helmsley.
Oh, man. A choke slam. The animal. The animal's down.
This is also why some wrestlers have long hair, as it can cover their faces, so fans don't see the wrestler chatting with their enemy. Old school wrestlers would actually take this a step further and speak in a different language called Carney. It's similar to Pig Latin, and here's what it sounds like.
Double skiz, oop, sliz, and move on biz oath is elbows. Round around the kiz honor. Duck the kiz commentator, piz unch Vincent in the fizz ace with the cowbell.
To the untrained tongue, this sounds like nonsense, which was the point. Even if someone heard wrestlers calling a spot, as long as they were speaking Carney, it would just sound like gibberish. As the scripted nature of wrestling became more well known, wrestlers started using Carney less and less, to the point where most wrestlers today don't know how to speak it. In some rare cases, you can actually see a veteran wrestler coaching a younger talent on live TV. In 2013, Chris Jericho began a feud with the debuting Fandango. After Jericho lost a match to Dolph Ziggler on Raw, Fandango attacked Y2J. Dango then went outside to grab a microphone, and Chris Jericho guided him through it. Being a pro, Jericho knew that Fandango had to pause before talking, which is why Chris told him not to say a word. Once the moment was right, you could see Jericho giving the signal by tapping Fandango on the leg.
It's Fandango!
WWE referees also have their own secret hand signals. After a wrestler performs or gets hit by a big move, like going through a table, the referee will check on them. While it looks like the ref is just talking to the wrestlers, they're actually putting their hand in the wrestler's palms. If the wrestler squeezes the referee's hand, that means the wrestler is okay. After getting the squeeze, the referee will raise a closed fist into the air. This tells the backstage personnel that everything is okay. If the wrestler doesn't squeeze the referee's hand, the ref will make an X sign with both of their arms. This lets the producers and doctors know that a wrestler is legitimately hurt. In some cases, the injury is obvious and the referee will skip the hand squeeze and throw up the X sign right away. In addition to the wrestlers and referees, WWE production crew members will use their own hand signals to communicate with the talent. This was seen during Chris Jericho's iconic WWE debut in 1999. While posing on the stage, a crew member's hand briefly flashed from behind the curtain to give Jericho the signal to turn around and begin talking. WWE cameramen do this too. The camera operator will give wrestlers cues when the broadcast is about to cut to them, so the talent knows when to make a certain pose pose or perform a specific action. Since WWE camera operators have headsets and can communicate directly with WWE producers backstage, the cameramen will sometimes give instructions when something goes wrong. At WrestleMania 39, The Miz and Snoop Dogg were announcing the attendance when Shane McMahon came out and challenged Miz to an impromptu match. Seconds into it though, Shane would legitimately tear his quad. With Shane unable to wrestle, a new plan had to be made on the fly. WWE producers had a cameraman communicate to Snoop Dogg that they wanted him to punch The Miz, which the rapper then did, saving the entire segment. If you ever watch a tag team match, you'll notice the good guy wrestlers are always on the left side while the bad guys are on the right. There's a reason for this, and to find out what it is, watch this video.